In this part 2 of the series on extracting the segment names from GP, I'm going to use the Excel query editor, which is in 2016 called Get and Transform, and in prior versions of Excel it was called Power Query, and we're going to extract the data out just using that and make it refreshable. So here I am in GP, doesn't matter what version you're in. And under Setup in the Financial section, we have our account segments. And here are the segment names. You could see I have 3 segments to my accounts: division, department, and account. And if I resort those by the segment numbers, it's the first 3 digits are division, the next 4 digits are account, and then the last 3 digits are department. And that's how we set those up. And if I were to pull up division, I can do a lookup and see all of the segment numbers that I have accounts for, and I could see the segment names on them. And if I wanted to, I'm going to open this up and change this from general to maybe operating, or actually let's name it other. And we'll go ahead and click on save. And I don't want to roll down the segment name to all of my accounts that already exist, so I'm going to go ahead and say no, and we'll close that out. Now, let's open up Excel. Now I'm in Excel 2016, so what I want to get is under Data, and we're going to use this Get and Transform section. If you're on an older version of Excel, you'll need to download the add-on called Power Query and use that. So I'm going to choose Get Data and get it from a database, and particularly get it from this SQL Server database. And when the window opens up, prompting me to log in, I will enter in the name of my SQL Server and the name of my database. And then I'll click OK. Now you do need to have access to the table that you want to connect to, or the view, inside of SQL Server. You don't grant that from GP. That has to be granted from SQL Server itself. And then now you get a list of all your tables and your views. These are tables, or rather those are views. And when I scroll down, you can see there's a different icon for tables. And if I scroll further, you could even see stored procedures. Now the table that I want to get is called GL402, and there it is. And if I highlight it, 40200, I see a preview. Now you do just have to know the name of that table, but I do, so there it is, GL40200. Once you get that done, I want to go ahead, click on Load, and connect it to my GP data. So here it is, the full table in GP, and I want to open up the query editor. So I'm just going to double click on that over on the right side in the query pane. And this is all the data in the table. Now, there's a couple things I always like to do when I'm in query editor. 3 things that I say. The first one is we want to give it a name that makes sense. So we're going to call this one Account Segment Master, or we'll call it Descriptions. Okay, so now it's something that makes sense to us instead of GL40200. The next thing I like to do is get rid of columns I don't need, and particularly I'll click on this icon for Choose Columns in the Manage Columns section. And the reason why I like to do this, not just because it creates this nice little list, but because it'll make it easy for me to go back if I forget something. So I want the segment number, the segment ID, the description, and maybe the date it was added. That's called DexRow TS for timestamp, and we'll click OK. And now if I want to go back in there, you notice in this applied step there's a little gear, and I could go back and always connect and go back and add to it. Now I tend to err on the side of caution by deleting it if I think I don't need it, because it's too easy to go back and add it. And then if I never need it, then it keeps me from having to process a lot of records until I finally decide to remove it. So what I'm going to do now is the third step, and this is verify the data types. You can see this one, the segment number is 1.2. I'm going to click on that, and I'm going to change that to text because I wanted to act like text. Segment number is already text. Description is already text. And the timestamp, I only want the date. So I'm going to change that to date. And then those are the 3 rules. Now I'm just going to go through and name these something that makes sense. So we'll just call this segment. And then we'll call this one segment number. Changing the whole thing on that one a little bit. Description, date modified. We'll call it that, just in case it was changed, or that would also include the date it was added. Now, one more thing I want to do, I have these 3 segment numbers here, and those don't necessarily make sense to some people. So most of the people that I might hand this report to are familiar with the terms division, account, and department. So I only have 3 segments, so I'm going to just come up to transform, and I'll choose transpose. Whoops, did not mean to do that. Let me close that out. Meant to click on replace values. And so now I'm going to say, all right, so for 1, I'm going to come in and replace that one with division. And now you can see that changed. And replace values again. We're going to change this one to, when we see a 2, we want it to be natural account. And then when we see a 3, we want this one to be department. And we'll click OK there. And you can see it's tracking each of my steps. And so now if I were to look over here, I can see, if I click on division, let's do division first, I can see where I changed that from general to other. So let's go ahead and open those back up for everything, because we don't want to filter the roles. Actually, let me just do it that way. So I'm going to click back on home and close and load to. So this looks pretty good. And now let me show you how it's refreshable. On this natural account for 1100, let's change that to cash. So I'm going to open up my GP back up, click on segment, look for that natural account segment, and I'm going to look for 1100. And we're going to call this one cash. And again, I do not want to roll the name changes down. So let's come back in and let's go to data and let's refresh. And now you can see how quickly that updated, and you could even see it has the last date that it was modified right there. And then finally, if I want to, I can come back in under design and click on summarize into a pivot table. And I could quickly see how many accounts I have. So I'm going to take my segment and put it into rows, and then I'm going to take my segment number and put it into the count of the segment number. So I can now see how many accounts I have, or numbers I have in each particular segment. Hope this helps, and there's 2 more parts to go.